Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Heal with Kat podcast. My name is Kat, and I am your host, and I am so excited to welcome you to this week's episode where I interview my new friend Lauren Dry, all the way in Australia, who calls herself the Connection Catalyst. And this was a really fun episode to record, mostly because it hit home for me in a lot of ways. And I think if you are somebody that really values relationships, connection, if you're really interested in things like boundaries or attachment style or neuroscience, this is going to be a really intriguing episode for you. I know it was for me, and I was like writing down all of the main topic points of what we talked about today, and it's a quick conversation, but there's literally so much information in it, and we are just scratching the surface in terms of the work that Lauren does. She is a wealth of knowledge. We talk about her relatable story. And I think for many of us who listen to her story, whether you're in a marriage or in a relationship, or whether you have other kinds of relationships in your life, the way that our subconscious navigates how we handle relationships in general shows up a lot in her story in a very relatable way. We talk about good girl and performance energy and how we think we're supposed to be in this world versus what it means to value authenticity and living in our truth. We talk about attachment theory, we talk about neuroscience, we talk about connection boundaries, which is a new thing I learned that I love. And we talked about connection in general. Of course, being the connection catalyst, she has so much to say about the ins and outs of what connection means. And although we don't get too into generational ties to connection, really you could take anything that she is talking about on the episode today and apply it back to things that you've seen in generations before you, just like with everything that we do, right? Not every episode on the Heal with Kat podcast is going to be generational in nature, but it is rooted in human behavior and it is rooted in spirituality in a sense as well. Even if the guest is not spiritual, there's always a spiritual tie to a lot of the things that I talk about and do. And so you can kind of track these human behaviors back into time, and it kind of helps you understand the lineage that you come from. And of course, it's connected to all different kinds of traumas as well. I really shot off the cuff with this one this week. I wasn't really going by any of the questions that I had originally planned for. We were just in a very intuitive conversational flow. I just hope you enjoy it. It's a really great one. And I think that, like I said, we just scratched the surface on connection and relationships. And we end the episode with a really powerful question, which is, why is it so hard to stay married in 2024? And her answer, it probably won't shock you too much, but it'll definitely make you think. So with that, guys, thanks so much for being here this week. And for everyone who is new to the Heal with Kat community, I just wanted to share a bit of a giveaway that I do every single month on the last day of every month on the podcast. I work as a family constellation therapy facilitator and also an intuitive medium and guide. And in that, I'm able to meld both the physical and the spiritual into ancestral healing. And I was giving away family constellation therapy sessions for a while, and I just found that it was kind of too much for my energy in the exchange. So I just switched over to giving away free intuitive readings. They're 35 minutes, and it is a juicy 35 minutes because we move through a lot of information in that time. And all you have to do to win a free intuitive reading with me is rate, subscribe, and review the podcast. Screenshot it and send it to me on Instagram, because I announce the winner on my Instagram stories, like I said, on the last day of each month on my Instagram stories. And the only way I will know how to get in contact with you is if you screenshot and send it to me in my DMs, because then I'll just tag you and send you all the information there. If intuitive readings, whether it's ancestral or not, has always piqued your interest, this is a great way to get your foot in the door with experiencing it. And if you're not new to it and you're like, I would like one anyways, I would love to see you there. So with that, thanks guys for listening to this week's episode, and I will see you guys next week. Lauren, welcome to the Heal with Kat podcast. I am so excited to talk with you today. I think we're going to have a really great conversation about connection, relationships. I'm dying to hear your intake and your input on a lot of different things when it comes to relationships and connection in our world today. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I love everything about how you approach your podcast, your thoughts, and the conversations we've been having behind the scenes about all things relationships and connection. So thank you so much for having me here.
Yes, I'm so excited. I was telling you just before we started recording that this is especially a meaningful conversation for me. point in my life right now because I'm working a lot on relational trauma and understanding how much complex relational trauma that I have in terms of my caregivers, my parents, my nuclear family,
Mm.
extended family, you name it. I'm sure there's going to be so many things that you can touch on with that. But before we get into all of the juicy information, I would love to learn more about you, your story, and how you got into this work.
Thank you. So, probably like so many other people who come to this work, the passion that I have from it comes from a deep personal experience of confusion, pain, loss around relationships, and this transformational experience around understanding that the traditional methods that we all expect to fill the gaps and really support us have a lot of work to do to catch up to the science, to catch up to what's really working. So, like so many other modern relationships, my husband and I, we got married, we had kids, we did the house, we did the thing. And I liked to think of myself as someone who was relatively intelligent, someone who's relatively good at problem solving, someone who, when it came to the things that mattered to me, I had the skill set that I needed to be able to stay on track, to hold on to the things that mattered to me. And when it came down to the crunch, when it came down to what really mattered, I didn't. We came to a point with two young children. He could barely stay in the same room, let alone a car drive, and tolerate each other, let alone be married to each other. Yet my skill set, what that really did give me was a really fantastic ability to put on a good show. And that was probably the most painful point of all. The fact that I could have such a big split between my external reality and my internal reality. And I needed answers. I needed to understand why I could be so successful, so adept at putting forward the image of what I thought I wanted. Meanwhile, the foundation of what I needed was so far out of my reach. So, my background previously involves, really working long hours for very big organizations. In another life, I worked in human resources. I've always been interested in serving others. Qualifications now include everything from international certifications around hypnotherapy and a whole other skill set around that. But in the past, my university qualifications included postgraduate in human behavior analysis. And so the interesting puzzle piece came to me as things were falling apart, that although I had done the counseling, we'd done the therapy. I mean, I had done the whole women's circles under the moon in a tent, like whatever you can think of. I had done it. I was so determined to quote unquote make this work. And it wasn't until really that I stumbled across my first unconscious mind mentor who explained to me in such simple layman terms how neuroscience and our own biology works, that the puzzle pieces started falling together. Over 95% of our behaviors, our relationships, our connections, they come from the foundation of our unconscious mind. Everything that we do, everything that we like, everything that we say is built from the foundation of so many thoughts, patterns, behaviors, beliefs, learnings that happen in a place in our brain that we're not even aware of. And that was such a big aha moment to me because I had been focusing for so long on what I could say right, what I could do right, how I could use these conscious mind tools, such as saying the right thing. Please do this for me, honey, or I am sorry, honey, even when I was choking on the words. And like so many people who've been together for a period of time, we had hurt each other in different ways. How do you come back from really big pain points? How do you even assess whether you should come back from really good pain points? And by dropping into my unconscious mind and really untangling the learnings that I had there, specifically around this great ability that I had to protect myself to the point of self-punishment, that allowed me to finally see clearly, let down my walls, and instead step into, hey, I'm really not interested in self-protection in a way where I block people out anymore and put on a show. What I'm interested in is self-value. I want to know what I need, and I want to know how to stand calmly and confidently in that. And then things really began to shift from there. The outcome moved instead from how do I stay married, whether it kills me or not, to okay, how do I step into who I really need to be so that I'm not unconsciously forcing someone to fit a mold that I think I want, but maybe I don't even need? How do
Hmm.
I assess whether we are compatible and whether we can value each other? And how do I repair a friendship? Because we share children. Like, I'm in this for life, whether we stay together or not. Like, this is it. I need to know that we can repair a friendship. And I need to do that from a place of, like, I really feel calmly confident no matter what's going to happen. And that was the beginning. And as I began to experience that, my world really opened up. And that was where I began to expand all my qualifications around unconscious mind rewiring, somatics, the nervous system. And as I was experiencing the results in my own life and my own marriage, that surrender, that peace that I found in my own marriage really came from me. And it really helped me to understand empowerment in a different way. Less women's empowerment, rah, rah, I do what I want, I'm an independent. Like, I could do that, but I was really lonely. And instead dropped into, yeah, actually, I'm really empowered because I really know what's happening underneath the surface and I know how to speak to that in a really loving, secure way that can't be shaken. And that changed the whole energy of not just my marriage, but all of my relationships. I had been going through a bit of a dark night of the soul, and it allowed me to just reset, surrender, and kind of draw my new foundations in a loving and secure way that allowed other people to kind of see me for who I really was, as opposed to just the protection on the outside.
I love your story because it's incredibly relatable. Like, I feel like I'm like, oh my gosh, like, yes, the programming that we go through with our families and with society to be good girls and to put on a show and to do it right and to be,
Mm,
it's just really, it ends up weighing on you. But I think a lot of people aren't conscious of that weight that it adds because
mm,
we think it's what we're supposed to do. And
mm,
so you talk about all these different wonderful tools on your tool belt, I like to call them, in the work that
mm.
you do with others. But specifically, I heard you talk about neuroscience and you mentioned the subconscious. And I heard this statistic once that 90% of our thoughts in the day are subconscious. And
Yeah.
so if you don't go into the subconscious and start rewiring some of those
Mhm,
thoughts that are just naturally
mhm,
guiding you on your day, then you kind of create the same energy. And it sounds like you're saying you were doing that in work, in your relationships, in
mhm,
motherhood.
mhm,
Did you ever explore your relationship with your parents? I know you work deeply with attachment theory and connection. So
mhm.
tell us what that was like if you went into that. Hey guys, it's Kat popping in during the episode today to tell you about my free cycle breaker quiz. Do you ever feel stuck in the same family patterns or even feel like the black sheep of your family and not in a good way? I felt like that my entire life. What if I told you that you could transform that role into something way more powerful, more meaningful, and more magical? With my cycle breaker quiz, I created this to help you understand the childhood coping tools that you are still replaying in your adult life. They're still showing up. And by understanding how you show up with your family and the role that you play, this can be the portal into understanding the patterns of your entire lineage just by looking at you. Whether you're the parentified child, the comedian, the rebel, the hyper independent, or like me, the caregiver, this quiz will give you the insights that you need to reframe any resentment about how your childhood has shaped you. Once you take the quiz, you'll get a short and personalized podcast episode in your email inbox that dives into your archetype, helping you see the strengths that you've gained from growing up in this complex family. I'll even share with you the potential challenges that you may be facing as this archetype. And I'll even share with you a spirit animal to work with along the way because who doesn't love a good spirit animal? The shift from black sheep to cycle breaker is a powerful one, and I want to support you along the way. Ready to embrace your role? All you have to do is go to catdao.com/cycle breaker to take the quiz. Again, that's catdao.com/cycle breaker to take the quiz. Your transformation from black sheep to cycle breaker starts right now.
Love attachment theory. My favorite kind of reflection there of what you said there, though, was have you ever gone into a relationship with your parents and done all that like a girl? Like I did. Like I could have classified like every member of my family, including myself. I was like, yeah, I've got the detail. Like I've got it. But my frustration was now what? Like I knew every trauma, I knew every pattern. I was like, yeah, I understand, but I'm so sick of understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm done with understanding. Like I need to move. I need change. I need something else other than sitting there and analyzing every micro trauma, every macro trauma, every generational trauma. Like, I'm really tired. Like, I'm just tired. I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I've understood till the cows come home. My brain is about to pop full of information, and none of it is useful to me right now.
Yeah.
So, in terms of attachment theory, like probably the funniest experience I had around having a big awakening around attachment theory, if anyone's not familiar with it, there's a few main primary attachment styles. And, you know, you can categorize them under different labels, but let's use the most common. So, anxious, avoidant, disorganized, and secure. And I walked into my first heart centered mentor session with my husband. I dragged him along, bless him. And I was like, he's avoidant, and I'm definitely secure because I don't relate to any of the other ones. And I've done all this work, and I'm definitely not like, I don't relate to myself as being a naturally anxious person. I'm quite someone who is confident in public scenarios and rah, 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 rah. And gosh, the poor woman, she just sat there. She let me finish talking. And I believe she eviscerated me in the most gentle way. She's like, okay, so what you are, your relationship with your mother, I believe, you probably were 1 minute best friends, the next minute like taking care of her, and you know, the 1 minute you were rewarded for being really, really strong, and then the next minute affection would be withdrawn. And again, none of this is an actual like criticism on my parents or, you know, who they are as people. This was just the way my unconscious mind interpreted the experience. And so that flip-flopping of, am I kind of in charge here versus am I feeling like I'm emotionally being abandoned, that created this behavior in you that feels like you need to really lean in and be hyper aware of emotional situations to the point that you abandon yourself. And you could have knocked me over with a feather. I was like, ow.
I felt that one for you because I'm like, yeah, I feel that.
You know, and I was like, pardon? And my whole world just completely shifted and turned around on its head because all of these skill sets that I believed were so good and so effective, I had someone to turn it on its head inside a period of 20 seconds and reflect back to me that it's actually not a powerful skill set to be constantly leaning into everything and be hyper aware to the point that you're self abandoning on a minute by minute basis and essentially offloading the work of your own self awareness and security onto others by focusing on how you can help them.
Like I have so many feelings but no words.
Yeah.
Like there's so much
Yeah.
happening in
Yeah. I
here
was like,
right
I'm
now.
a helper. I'm a fixer. I'm the friend that you can count on at 3 o'clock in the morning. How can this be a bad thing? And suddenly she
Yeah.
was like, girl, you're actually offloading your work.
Yeah.
And I just went, so that was my first, I think, foray into unconscious patterns. Like, so let's put attachment theory into an unconscious pattern box. And it just allowed me to see things in a new light because we'd been stuck in a pattern of run and chase. And I think anyone who's dropped into attachment theory before can relate to this. If you're in an anxious versus avoidant pattern dance, there's one person who's constantly trying to fix, constantly feeling resentful that they're doing all the work. And then you've got another person equally feeling resentful that they're being picked apart.
I heard once that there's duality to all our relationships, that
Mm.
the anxious person will choose the avoidant because
Mm-hmm.
it's their need to fulfill a purpose and a role and a dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Like we need the yin and the yang.
Yep.
But there's a part of me that also wonders if most people who are anxious, I'll speak for myself, choose avoidant partners because maybe there was a parent who was more avoidant and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't get that security and that love and connection, or vice versa with the
Mm-hmm.
avoidant and the anxious. There was some unneed met at the core of that
Mm-hmm.
then kind of propelled certain relationship
Mm-hmm.
dynamics to happen. What are your thoughts on that?
So we so often villainize what I like to call our protector part. So our protector part creates relationships, behaviors, patterns, instances in our life that on the surface don't make sense. Why would we, if we are an anxious person, choose someone who's an avoidant? Like that sounds like self-punishment, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Like, we want to be loved, we want to be seen, we want to be held, we want to be heard. Why would we choose someone who is an avoidant who runs away? The protector part, however, is not really interested in, or the survival part of our brain. The protector part is language that I like to use in Rise. It just gives you a picture of what we're working with. The protector part, before I did this work, I used to villainize it. I was like, why would I do this to myself? This sounds like self-punishment. It just sounds like a brutal way to live. Why would I do that? Until I realized that our protector part, our unconscious mind, that area of our brain, the survival part, actually is not really interested in us being happy. It's interested in the familiar and the predictable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. You'll choose a
So
familiar pain.
exactly that saying. So, and what it can predict, it can work with, it can keep us safe. Oh, I know you. You feel familiar. I can work with this. I know how to get a semblance of attention versus deep, authentic connection because I can work the system here. And deep, authentic connection feels safe because when I was young, I tried to get deep, authentic connection and I was abandoned, emotionally abandoned. So that's not going to happen. And if you try to get that, you will be abandoned. I've built you a skill set here that allows you to get attention instead of deep, authentic connection. So when you feel that sense of familiarity, that's like, oh, I can work with this.
It's interesting too, because I think with every relationship, or rather, this is a belief I have. Again, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on it. But I do think that in most relationships, excluding addiction and abuse to some extent, most avoidant, anxious dances are repairable to some extent, like if people are
Absolutely.
willing to do the work. And I say abuse and addiction because, like, yes, people can choose in those situations, but those are a little bit more particular in my opinion than just kind of your normal anxious avoidant dance with some relationships. But yeah, do you believe that? I mean, what are your thoughts on that in general?
So I actually have a really loving reflection around that. So part one is that's how protector part operates. What we don't really understand though is that this doesn't come from a place of self punishment. As much as it's, okay, this is familiar and I know what this is, what we actually don't realize from, and let's get, some people might call this woo woo, some people might call this faith, some people might call this unconscious patterning. Okay. So essentially, what that pattern also does at an unconscious mind level is it catalyzes enough of the unhealthy connection in these relationships to give you the space in the room and the discomfort to move. So, our unconscious mind actually wants us to be authentic. That pain comes from, I'm not myself. I'm not connected. I'm not able to receive the care that I need, and I'm not able to give it either because I don't feel safe. So I'm going to make you uncomfortable in the exact right way that I need you to be so that you move. I actually don't want to catalyze this relationship with you for you in someone who's completely healed and healthy and settled and calm, because there's always going to be this undercurrent for you of why aren't I satisfied? Why aren't I happy? And it's because that catalyzing moment hasn't occurred yet of, oh my gosh, I haven't repaired that deep relationship within myself that knows how to receive, that knows how to give in a way that feels really secure, and that knows how to be authentic in a way that is restful in every relationship.
To take that to a more spiritual sense, and feel free to let the woo woo fly on this panel because we are all woo here for the most part. I smile in relief when you say that, because what it reflects within myself is this deep belief that we are souls and that there is
Yeah.
love emanating. We are part of a divine intelligence that understands there's a program that is soft but loving happening within us at all times, that wants us to be resolved of the pain that we're carrying, that wants to help us grow and evolve. I
Mhm.
deeply believe that as souls we come back to earth to evolve, to grow, to experience certain human experiences that help us as a soul altogether. And I just love your perspective on that because it's so gentle and yet powerful at the same
Mhm.
time. And if people are really listening to what you're saying, it
Mhm.
kind of takes you back for a minute, kind of takes your breath away in the sense of like your brain, your soul, your body, all of who you are is just trying to help you if only you
Mhm.
can see it that way.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. That's exactly it.
You touched on something on your Instagram that I saw today that I just loved, and it's on the topic of connection. And you said that you don't believe that the opposite of disconnection is connection. You said that it's curiosity. And I
Yes.
really want to elaborate on that because I think so many people, especially some of the couples that I work with family constellation therapy, there's a lot of narratives that they're living by. They've already identified the person they're in a relationship as a
Mhm.
certain way without getting
Mhm.
curious about the other person.
Yeah.
And so when you said it's not connection, it's curiosity, I was intrigued. So I would love to hear more about that.
So the favorite way I like to expand on this is the Cartman drama triangle. I love the Cartman drama
Oh,
triangle.
yes.
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 So essentially, what I like to support my clients with is coming into the middle, because the Cartman drama triangle has this really beautiful way of explaining how at one end you have the villain, at another end, so corner of the triangle, you've got the villain, you've got the victim, you've got the hero. And like, so I think the example that I shared in the past was, okay, mum is at work, she gets a call. Her daughter has been sent to the principal's office at school. She's in trouble. And so the mum puts on her hero hat. She goes and she sweeps her daughter away from the school because her daughter's been bad. Her daughter's the villain. So she's the hero, daughter's the villain, sweeps her daughter up, takes her home, explains to her the consequences, sends her to her room, and her husband comes home. Okay. The husband walks in the door and the wife unloads. Can't believe our daughter did this. Where have we gone wrong? So the mum is now in the victim position and the husband is in the hero position. Okay. And he's just accepting all of this and just supporting her. And essentially, you think that this is all a very loving and common sense dynamic, right? Okay. Well, let's take a step back. The daughter comes out of the bedroom. She's crying. She's really, really upset. It turns out she'd been sent to the principal's office for a completely unjustified reason. And there was an outcome that needs to happen from this where actually the teacher involved really needs to have a conversation. And there's a pattern in the school that really needs correction. And thank goodness the daughter had stood up for herself, otherwise, no one would know. Now the mum drops into the victim position again and is like, oh my gosh, can't believe I did this. And hyper focuses instead on fixing the problem instead of supporting her daughter and allowing her daughter to feel safe and heard.
Wow.
Again, it just can keep going around and around and around. But if we reset and we go straight from the start, at each example, we say, okay, the mum receives a call from the school, her daughter's in trouble, and the mum has the recognition, oh my goodness, my daughter and I clash. I really want to put her in the villain position right now, but I'm aware that I do that. And we could go into a whole other reason why there's that dynamic between mothers and daughters, but we're not going to do that right now. I'm going to use my somatics. I'm going to drop back into my body. I'm going to create some space for curiosity around the fact that I don't have all the answers right now. I trust that I don't have all the answers right now. I trust that there's a higher purpose for my daughter. Perhaps it didn't come out the right way, but I trust there is more to this story that I don't know yet. So I'm going to drop back into my body, drop into security, drop into like that open heart space. And then when I get to the principal's office, instead of dragging my daughter out, I'm just going to pull her aside quietly and ask for her story on what happened. And then, because I've stayed in that place of openness and curiosity, two things could possibly happen. She could have absolutely been in the wrong, and she could absolutely require firm consequences on all the rest. Most often, it's a mix of the both. Most often it's a mix of, okay, I do need to kind of explain that there's a better way to do things. And also there is something that happened here that actually needs my conscious attention in terms of how my daughter feels at the school and what she needs. So that gives you the ability to handle both from a place of active problem solving, because when we're regulated, the ability that our brain has to problem solve increases by 300%. Then
Whoa.
I know, wild, right? So essentially, in relationships or in life, in business, being regulated is the essential cornerstone piece. In human resources, the essential piece to hiring anyone is, do you have emotional intelligence? I'm so much less interested in your skill set than I am in your ability to have grit, to be able to communicate well. And so it's this cornerstone piece that's just missing from so much of the conversation, because that could all have been resolved right at the start. And instead of coming home, punishing, instead of listening and feeling open, instead of offloading onto the husband from a sense of, okay, I really need you to bear this weight, without coming at this from a teamwork perspective where we can problem solve and support each other from it, without dropping into shame and guilt for the fact that, oh my gosh, I should have spoken to my daughter in the first place, instead of, hey, oh gosh, okay, there was a mistake here, there was information missed, let me hold you through that. Like, I'm really secure in the fact, something I tell my daughter is like, I'm good at making mistakes. Like, what a flip, you know? So it's a really powerful way of looking at, okay, we all have the temptation to black label people, and it comes from the psychological desire to split. Splitting is using black and white, and what it does is it gives us safety. It's like, are you for me or are you against me? I am in a hyper focus mode, I'm in a hyper vigilance mode. I need to crunch down the information really quickly and really efficiently as to whether you are safe or not. But that removes all the detail. And that removes all the possibility that you previously could have had to resolve this in a new, safe, secure, and effective way. By coming out of the carbon drama triangle, putting yourself in the middle, removing labels from yourself and anyone else, and having curiosity about what's possible on the other side.
How healing that would have been for all of us in our childhoods if we would have
Right.
just been trusted. You know, do you know Dr. Becky Kennedy at all?
I'm not familiar with her work, but I'll bet you that it's something I may have come across. It's just not coming to me right now. So I'm curious about where you're going with that.
You would love her. You would love her. She is a therapist and I believe a researcher. But, anyways, I heard her on like, she was on a lot of podcasts that I listened to. And she wrote this book called Good Inside. And her belief is that all children are good inside. If we can only just get curious about what is fueling, what are their feelings, what are their boundaries, what are your boundaries, like that staying curious, I think you would love it. Which kind of then leads me into my other question. You talk about connected boundaries. Is this
Mm,
kind of a segue we can go into
yeah,
talking about
absolutely.
connected boundaries? Because I'm not even really sure what that means, but
Yeah,
there's these two words that keep popping out that you're
yeah.
saying.
I adore connected boundaries. They're this one. It's the signature method that I use inside of Rise. And when I absolutely have a hot minute to myself, I will finish the book on it. It is, I believe, the essential cornerstone piece to having secure relationships with absolutely anybody. And I mean anybody, because connected boundaries, the best way to getting curious about what connected boundaries are. So often in traditional, let's just say pop psychology, boundaries are about how to block the other person. Okay, I don't like what you said, stop there, don't come any closer. I don't like what you did, stop there, don't come any closer. I don't like what happened here, I'm going to remove myself. So it's a very hard line approach. And I think boundaries, let's be clear here, are an essential piece to relationships. But connected boundaries, what they actually invite us to do is to drop instead into our values. What do I value? So we have three levels of our connected boundaries. The first is communication. What do I value at a communication level? The second is lifestyle. What do I value at a lifestyle level? And the third is your core values. What do I value right at my core? And it allows us, these three levels allow us to have like a clear assessment of where the other person is in relation to us. So you may have a conversation with a checkout chick, someone at the shops who you're never going to see again, who you resonate with at every level, and you're going to walk away feeling super rested and super connected. But you also may have a conversation with that same person who, for some reason you're not quite sure about, rubs you the wrong way. Now, without the connected boundaries and an understanding of your own values, you won't be sure why. You'll walk away, you'll probably stew on it for the rest of the day, take it personally. But having an understanding of your 3 levels allows you to do a check at each level. So you're walking through the checkout and the person that you're talking to is rude. Let's just say that. They say something rude. They swear, or they're aggressive with their language, or their tone of voice is just too loud. If you have an understanding of what your communication values are, do you know what? I actually value calm communication. I don't like people swearing at me. Swearing in general, I can take. Don't swear at me. I don't like to be teased. Some people like to be teased. It's a part of their sense of humor. I actually don't. When it comes to teasing, I have a terrible sense of humor. I really do. I know it's meant to be funny, but I take it personally.
Yeah.
Okay? But because I'm aware of my communication boundaries, if someone starts to tease me now, I'm like, oh, that's your sense of humor. I've actually done enough work to realize I don't value that. So perhaps in this conversation, I can use one of my 3 doorways: educate, redirect, or release. So I can educate you on my boundary is like, okay, funny joke. I'm terrible at being teased, so I'm sure it was very funny, but I don't like being teased. We can redirect, change the subject, or we can release. And we can just be like, okay, I actually have to go over here, or I have to go get a cup of tea, or I have to go I have to leave, I have to go home, if the behavior continues and it's not within your values. And if it's in a close relationship, you can also place a bridge. So if you're at home and you're having a conversation with your partner and they're not respecting your communication boundary, it can be less, I'm leaving the room if you continue to talk to me like that, and more, hey, I don't value being teased in communication. I'm actually like, my nervous system is going to shut down in a second, and I'm going to say or do something that is outside of my values of who I am and how I show up in relationships. So I'm going to go take a break. I'm going to come back in 5-10 minutes. And the important thing with bridges is it's our responsibility to place them. It's our responsibility to cross them as well. So what happens is that we have empowerment around, look, I'm going to go regulate, I'm going to release, and I'm going to come back over the bridge. In many, many instances, it's not okay. And there are going to be times where it's not safe to come back over that bridge again. But we're talking about in the context of most relationships and most kind of mini ruptures and sometimes macro ruptures. And that allows you to say, look, I am safe. I have 3 doorways that I can walk through. If there's a breach in one of my connected boundaries levels, and I know how to come back across it, because during that time away, I'm actually focusing on regulating and getting clear, not dissociating. And it allows you to kind of determine, who should I have down at level 3? You know, I might bump into another mum at school or another coworker who I really vibe with. You know, all of our communication values match. All of our lifestyle values match. We spend all of our time together, but there may be a mismatch at the core. What about if this person really values little white lies because they think that that's a really kind and supportive thing to do, so that people don't feel hurt or upset, or, you know, that you don't, that's simply something that they value. Little white lies to create security for other people. But what if your highest value is authenticity? You're going to be walking around judging this person in the back of your brain 24/7. Is it fair to be in connection and relationship with someone who you are constantly judging? It just takes that angle and flips it a little, where you go, hey, you know what? People have different values at different levels. Should I be pouring all of my energetic capacity into everyone? Or should I just be getting some clarity on what my values are, whether I'm being accountable to them? So if your value is accountability, if your value is authenticity, like, are you walking and talking in authenticity, or are you just expecting everyone else to be authentic and, you know, constantly on guard yourself? So, you know, are you living your own authentic life? Do you have awareness of who you are at your core and what your values are? It just allows you to look at relationships and look at boundaries in a way that's honoring, not only of your own self, but of other people. Like, hey, I'm curious, through your behavior, I think that what you're trying to tell me is that this is what you value. I actually don't value that. But do you know what? I have the capacity to educate you and learn, and also I'm also curious enough to learn, to see if we can bridge that gap in the value. Or I can redirect, or and I can still honor that you value that. No stress. It's just not something that I value. And this is the extent to which I can respect you and also respect me at the same time.
It's so important, I think, to have a good understanding of what your values are. And out of
Mm.
the many podcasts that I've done in the last few years, but especially lately in the last couple of months, as I've been having people from Podmatch on, it seems that like every single person, and I don't know if this is because I need to hear it or like everyone needs to hear it and be reminded of it, but everyone talks about values, from money trauma to relational trauma to narcissistic abuse to your health. Everyone talks about values. My question to you is, as a highly sensitive person, and I may or may not be speaking for myself, as a highly sensitive person, how do we navigate when values are not aligning with certain people and not knowing how to know if we should walk away or not? Meaning, like, you, how to navigate the relationships where, like, let's just say it's family and you like are totally opposite and you don't have the same values, but they kind of are in your life just because they're family and they're there, and you
Mhm.
can't necessarily just like walk away and never talk to them again. How do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's so important for this type of year as well. This time of year. So the reason why this is so important is because so often, particularly with family members, we put them in the box of, and this comes back to the splitting again, or the the desire to say, okay, you're the villain, I'm the victim, or whatever it is. But what we're really looking to do is build in our ability to understand and identify what their values are at which level. Because for so many of us, you actually might share core values there. We both value being authentic, we both value being supportive, we both value family, but there may be a clash there around lifestyle. Do you know which political party did you vote for? What kind of schooling, if you think that you're a homeschooler, or you think that, traditional schooling is breaking our children, or the opposite as well. Like, these are fundamental, really challenging subjects, but they are at level 2. So if there is a core match, I value authenticity, but we do fight a lot about different subjects, that gives you the security to go, okay, I actually really do like and value this person on an individual level, but we should stay away from these topics. You know, we're not going to see eye to eye. We have different lifestyle values. So I don't need to convince everyone of what my lifestyle values are. So what that's going to do is give me the capacity to say, but do you know what? Because we have a core values match, this is going to allow me to create space within the relationship for there to be connection in safety. Don't bring up the lifestyle values. Like, we don't have to walk around bludgeoning everyone with our opinion. If there's room and there's space and there's safety because the communication values are being matched, there's room for that educate doorway. But education goes both ways. And I think that's missing in the boundaries conversation. Like, if I'm trying to educate you on your value, I also need to be open to learning and being educated about your value as well. And that's where the mismatch happens. If we're walking around like a bull in a china shop with our own values and our own boundaries, without curiosity about what's happening on the other side, we just end up alone. And that's not what humanity is about. However, when it comes to a core values mismatch, this is the key piece with family and relationships, particularly this time of year. Let's say that there's a core values mismatch. You actually don't value my authenticity. You don't respect and value who I am as a person, even if there's a difference in lifestyle and lifestyle values. I'm noticing through your behavior that there is contempt, perhaps through the communication patterns there. I want to be curious, and perhaps if I'm noticing that the language being used is drifting towards contempt or drifting towards disrespect, I'm going to be able to call that out at level 1, which is, hey, not sure if you're aware, but your tone of voice is XYZ. And I'm feeling like maybe we shouldn't continue this conversation right now, we should take a break and come back. So that's a bridge. But if that continues and that's consistent, and you have evidence that at a core level there's a values mismatch, I'm constantly going to be disrespecting your requests, your requirements. I'm constantly going to be disrespecting your values at level 1 and at level 2. And at level 3, there's got core levels mismatch in terms of, do I feel safe in any kind of conversation with this person at all? That's when it becomes important for you to ascertain and get really, really clear on the energetic capacity that you have to have a healthy relationship. Because if you have no capacity and all you feel in your own body is contempt, disgust, rejection, fear, anger, is it appropriate and fair for the other person for you to be interacting? Like, that's important for us to hold our own selves accountable for. And it's a really important values check as well. You know, if I value forgiveness, if I value curiosity, if I value openness, have I created room to learn? Have I created any room to be curious about, like, maybe I have been splitting, maybe I've been creating villain characters. But if you have been staying in that space regularly and you have enough evidence to go, you know what, I have been creating curiosity. I have been trying to learn. I have been kind of confidently navigating my own boundaries and confidently navigating the security and the love for my own values. And that's important. That's the foundation of good relationships, is having a good relationship with your own values. Then if you do need space and your energetic capacity is very, very low and you cannot offer the best of yourself in that situation, what that creates is a loving invitation to your own self and to others to say, look, if I bring myself to this situation right now, if I bring the low capacity that I've got, I could make this worse. This could just end badly. So how about I create a situation in an environment and a connective possibility here that it might not make others happy, but let's just do this for now. And again, what I like to say, and this is a common saying that everybody uses, but I really like it. You know, worrying about the future is as anxiety, worrying about the past is depression. And so often when it comes to boundaries and physical boundaries and saying, I don't have the capacity for you this year, or can't, come to this event right now, like, just add, I can't do it right now. Like, we don't know what's going to happen in the future. We don't know what's going to happen with other people. Again, curiosity, like, create space for curiosity. If that's the best you can do right now, that's still a loving thing to do. But do it from the place of, look, I've done a check with my values. I really feel secure that I have matched my own values in terms of how I navigate conflict, in terms of how I get curious about what's happening. I think I'm making a really conscious decision here, and I'm creating space for the unknown of the future as well. I'm not really locking myself into a box.
So profound. And I think what we forget in a lot of relationships is that relationships are at some level meant to be a bit uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
if we don't create, I'm of the belief that if it's a healthier relationship and it's someone we want in our lives and it's not harming ourselves and the other person to be in that relationship, if we constantly run at the first sense of discomfort because it doesn't feel safe, then we
Mm-hmm.
don't get to teach our bodies and our minds, and I think our subconscious, that you can have discomfort in relationships and still be in a happy relationship with someone. I mean, that is kind of like I think discomfort is par for the course in relationships. So
Mm.
I love that you touch on that in a sense. I'm not sure how you feel about that, but for me personally, I have felt that the better I have a relationship with discomfort, then the more, and in healthier relationships, then the more that I'm able to create space for curiosity within myself and the other person.
Yeah.
Something else that you said in terms of what I do with family constellation therapy is, a lot of times people are coming to me and asking me, well, I feel better about my relationship with my family, but I'm not ready to talk about these things, but I want to be in connection with them. I talk a lot about belonging with our family systems, how we connect, how we belong, how we bond. What are the things that we're creating connection through? Sometimes they're good for us and sometimes they're not supportive for us and our highest and best good. And so as you were talking, I was just thinking about how just as we have to redirect or educate or kind of figure out different ways to connect with people or draw boundaries, we have to do that with our families as well in a lot of ways, and to stay curious about their experience too, because I think with generational trauma, it's so deeply embedded in every single generation that everyone may be connecting over drinking all the time, but maybe you're the one that doesn't want to drink anymore, but you don't know how to belong to the family without drinking. So there's a level of that comes to mind. Shooting off the top of my head, what comes to mind. Last thing I really want to touch on, Lauren, is you say this in your Podmatch profile, and I just thought it was so interesting, kind of off topic, but why is staying married in our day and age so difficult for people?
The reason why staying married is so difficult for people in this day and age, I want to like reflect back on something first of all that you said earlier that I really, really loved in terms of belonging. I'm sure that you're familiar with the really cool quote from Brené Brown about how fitting in is about assessing a situation and becoming who you need to be accepted. Belonging, on the other hand, is the opposite. It doesn't require us to change who we are. It requires us to be who we are. So are we creating space for someone to belong? Are we making sure that we are having a clear assessment of whether we are trying to belong or trying to fit in?
Mm.
And with that comes discomfort. And discomfort in relationships, I think we really, really need to change our perception of what discomfort in relationships is. It's very much a choose your discomfort situation. Which direction am I leaning in? Am I leaning in the discomfort of learning more about myself and using relationships as a playground to be able to do that? Or am I choosing the discomfort of self-sacrifice or self-abandonment, or even utilizing walls and walking around like a bull in a china shop to demand comfort? And that's different. So, and I think that really leads into what you just asked about why it is so hard to stay married today. And you've got your common ground for why staying married is so hard that applies over generations. But right now, the added pressure is very much we are seeing an increasing split between external reality and internal reality. You've got social media and you've got all of these tools that can so daily, minute by minute, feed into this reality of other people's lives that's not true. It's really, really not. And on top of that, you have a really quick and easy access to dopamine. And whether it's scrolling on your phone, for some people, it's things like porn or affairs or whatever it is, addictions, drinking, the dissociation tools at our fingertips are just a heartbeat away. And sometimes those dissociation tools can be as simple as I'm scrolling on my phone, or I have work to do, I don't have time for this. And the importance of understanding that phrase of choose your discomfort is very much, do I choose the discomfort that steers me to the direction that I need to go and that helps meet my needs? Or am I choosing the discomfort of dissociation, which is disconnection? So dissociation is a useful tool that helps us in a state of overwhelm. It's related to the freeze response, and I've been talking about that quite a bit. But freeze, we have to understand that freeze response, that desire to dissociate, actually comes from a complete overwhelm and shutdown of our nervous system, in whereby we don't feel like we've had fight taken away. We can't fight the threat. We've had flight taken away. We can't run from the threat. We've had fawn taken away. We can't even try to put on a front of being okay. So we need to understand that desire to dissociate, that desire to self-soothe, that desire to plug the gap of the pain comes from, first of all, a loving place trying to protect us. But we have to understand the seriousness of it. That desire to dissociate, the desire not to resolve and drop into authenticity and get deep in your relationships around what's happening here and how can we both be authentic and get curious. That desire to dissociate and shut down is serious, is the ultimate act of your nervous system that says, can't do this anymore. We are torn in so many different directions, and every direction is shouting at you, I need your attention the most. I need your attention the most. I need your attention the most. You're not good enough if you can't do it all. You're not good enough if you can't do it all. And sometimes that you're not good enough, you can't do it all, is the millions of messages that are in your inbox from work, on your text messages from friends, the group chats from school, the family chat, and then in the background, you've got your family and you've got your kids who are present and there and waiting for your connection, and your brain is literally just shutting down. So we have to, I think, honor and respect the busyness and the, like, for lack of a better word, the grabbiness of the world around us right now. It takes time and conscious effort, and it takes being okay with sitting in other people's discomfort sometimes to turn away from the world and choose, hey, I'm going to choose this discomfort. And it's going to mean that maybe I don't make that event this time. Maybe I draw some boundaries around my work, and I resonate with how hard this is as a business owner. But, consciously making that choice of I am working for the purpose of having a fulfilled life. And so that needs to be balanced. And sometimes for people who are really, really busy and pouring themselves into everything that they have, that looks like, instead of, oh my gosh, I have to shut everything down by 6 p.m. and focus on this, how about some conscious hours when you first walk in the door? How about from 6 till 10:30, you take care of this, 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 and this has your conscious attention. If you need to work till midnight after that, more power to you. You're building something you should be proud of. But we have to consciously wrench our attention away from the world that is trying to tell us that it is far more important. And that's why staying married is so hard, because all it takes is a scroll. All it takes is, oh, I'm just going to go out with my friends. I'm going to go have a drink. Like, my social life is really, really important. And it is. But also, what are you building? Where are you putting your conscious attention? And also, we have to be aware that we need to choose our discomfort. And if we avoid discomfort instead of actively choosing which kind of discomfort that we are interacting with for a higher purpose that we have consciously chosen, life will make the decision for us. And before we know it, we're 10 miles down the road, the relationship has fallen apart, and we don't know where we went wrong. And I just want to really empower anyone who feels that sense of failure or hopelessness. And even if they feel like they've been doing all the things, they've been going to the therapy, they've been the patterns that you're in, and the life path that has led you here, I want to just deeply share with you my trust in that purpose. I know that it may hurt right now, and I know that, maybe you may feel lost and it may feel really confusing and challenging. I just want to share my trust with you, not only your protector part, but, if you're a person of faith, if you're a person of woo-woo who trusts in the universe, whatever it is, there is so much that we don't understand, and that we shouldn't. We're human beings. Our job is just to trust and just to allow ourselves to be open enough to have curiosity.
I know today we have literally scratched the surface on all of the work that you do. If anyone is listening and they are just like, I love Lauren, I love her work, I need to know more, how can people connect with you? How can they find you and even work with you?
So you can find me, I probably hang out the most over at Instagram. I really like to share as much as I can there, as many free resources as I can. I've got a free training available in my link in bio. I have a YouTube video that's just been launched about how to manage the freeze response. I do have a podcast, the Connection Podcast, but Instagram is really where I hang out, and I really like to chat to you and learn more about you, share my story. My Instagram page is the.connection.catalyst. And I'm just so excited to connect with you and, share your story as well. So thank you so much for giving me this space, Kat. It's been such a joy. I just feel like there are so many different pathways we could walk down, and I hope to explore all of them in future. And this has been just such a conversation full of joy and connection. So I'm so grateful.
I am equally as grateful. I have walked away from this episode learning so much myself, and I'm excited to be connected with you on Instagram now just so I can take in all of the wisdom you have. Thank you so much for your time. We will link everything in the show notes below. Lauren, thank you so much for coming on the Heal with Kat podcast. And guys, we will see you next week.